The Sinai Peninsula is a huge piece of land between Israel and Egypt that is pretty much unoccupied. It's approximately 23,000 square miles, which is almost 3 times the size of Israel, but it's only 6% of Egypt's area. Given that, why won't Egypt allow the Gazan refugees to resettle in the Sinai? There's nobody there.
I don't think the Gazans want to resettle in the Sinai. And I think plans for resettlement are overthought. I'm a libertarian. You can't plan where people are going to resettle. The key is to let them out, and then they'll go wherever they want to go. Right now, people come from all of Africa to take boats to Europe. Where do they do that from? Egypt. Mm-hmm. Right? Egypt is the jumping off point. So we don't need to tell the Gazans where to go. That's up to them. And maybe there's not many people in the Sinai, for good reason. Maybe it's hard to live there. Most people who get to Egypt are not interested in staying in Egypt. Mm-hmm. And the Gazans, who are reasonably well educated, they can go somewhere else. I'm sure they would want to. They can, Turkey is a short boat ride away. Turkey is a major supporter of the Palestinian cause, a major investor in Gaza. So I'm sure they'd be happy to have them. And in general, it's up to them, where to go. We know that Europe has taken millions of refugees from other countries, and they're big believers in the Palestinian cause.
Mm-hmm. Let them
surely they would want to help out.
Surely.
And they're big believers in refugee rights. And they even have a phrase they call it illegal. What do they call it? Illegal turnbacks at the border. You're not allowed to turn people away. So it's up to the Gazans. I wouldn't expect them to come to America. That's too far, not a natural choice. But just in the Mediterranean area, there's plenty of places for them. It should be their choice. Mm-hmm. They should be treated like any other people
refugees
fleeing
wartime,
fleeing a conflict. I assume they all want to wind up in Sweden, like every other,
like lots of other Muslims.
Yes, it's interesting. Refugees have very high standards these days. Refugee technically means someone who flees from one country to the next. Right. Once they've moved on to the third country, they're not refugees anymore.
Right.
They're just seeking opportunity,
looking for a better deal,
which is fine.
Deal. Right.
That's fantastic. Mm-hmm. But generally, they're not gonna be satisfied with Egypt, which is good because Egypt doesn't want them there either. Egypt has a Muslim Brotherhood problem. So I don't think there's a need to find a solution. Like no one thought, where are we going to put all the Afghan
Syrians.
Refugees,
Right.
Ukrainian refugees? What's the solution? We need to find some place to house them.
It'll just happen.
It'll just happen. European countries have in previous refugee situations tried to figure out some allocation amongst them to share the burden.
And since they're the ones who have been speaking so frequently and so vehemently about Palestinian rights and human rights of Palestinian people, they should be the first up to say we'll take 500,000.
But the key is just to get them out of harm's way.
Right.
They're in danger. They're being used as human shields.
Right. Intentionally.
Presumably they don't like that. If they like that, then they're not human shields. Then they're actually participating in hostilities. And if they don't like it, they should have an opportunity to not be human shields. So in a sense, by keeping the border sealed, we are arming Hamas. We, the West, are arming Hamas.
And on top of the problems that we've already discussed, we haven't talked about the hostages. And look, it's a horrible thing that people are being held hostage and obviously in terrible situations, terrible conditions, most likely being tortured, most likely being killed. But to come to terms and to stop the war or even to hesitate in the war to get some hostages back makes no sense to me. And it makes no sense to anyone if you go back in time and think about the deal that was done to free Gilad Shalit.
Made this war possible.
Made this war possible. For those of you who aren't aware of this, some number of years ago, maybe it was 10 years ago, ago. Eugene will tell us when it happened because he's a historian. But the Hamas or Hezbollah or somebody, it was Hamas, I think, right? Hamas kidnapped a soldier, a young Israeli soldier named Gilad Shalit, and held him for hundreds of days. And there were protests in Israel, bring Gilad Shalit back. And then that ended up in negotiations between the Israeli government and Hamas or whoever. Was it Hamas?
It was Hamas.
It was Hamas. Israel freed 1,000 Hamas supporters or members who were in jail.
Terrorists.
They were terrorists. They weren't in jail for stealing cars. 1,000 of them were traded for, and many of them had blood on their hands. In other words, they were convicted of murder. Okay? 1,000 of them were given over to bring Gilad Shalit.
Including the current head of Hamas, Sinwar.
Including Sinwar, who's the head of Hamas in Gaza. And those people who were released immediately went back to the battlefield, and many of them participated or organized what happened now. So it's a shame to have to say, but it should be that when when terrorists take hostages, it should be the government should say, we are considering them as dead.
Yeah, I think the United States has traditionally had a policy of not negotiating with terrorists. And in this particular case with Hamas, why did they take the hostages? They took the hostages because that's how they intend to win the war.
Mm-hmm.
And
to tie Israel's hands so Israel can't flood the tunnels, because God forbid there will be hostages in the tunnels that drown.
It's an unspeakable tragedy about the hostages. But at the same time, if as a result of the hostages Hamas is not defeated,
there'll be more.
There will be more hostages, many more hostages, and there'll be more dead.
And that is so obvious because of what happened with... It's obvious anyway, it's common sense that that's what's going to happen. But Gilad Shalit...
One of the mistakes, after October 7th, we should understand that the hostage deals are massively, massively destructive.
Right.
But in this case, it's their ace in their sleeve. Why are they still fighting? What are they possibly hoping for? They're hoping for two things. They're hoping that Western pressure will stop Israel short of a total win, and they're hoping that the hostages will stop Israel short of a total win, and then they'll be able to regenerate.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Now, I don't want to criticize Israel, of course, in the midst of the war, but how was it possible for Hamas to launch a surprise attack on Israel involving, 3,000 troops or whatever, and lots of planning and logistics? How was it possible that the Mossad or Shin Bet or Israel wasn't aware, didn't learn about this? It's scary.
So they did learn. They didn't digest. So I think it's too early to draw conclusions. There's going to be many investigations. We're going to find out the results of those investigations. But I think right now the basic default understanding is they knew many of the facts from which they could have inferred it, but the facts didn't add up to the picture. Because if you don't expect to see something, you won't see it. I remember I took a neurobiology class in college. One of the points the professor made was, if like an alien spaceship landed outside, you might not see it even, because it's so outside of what your mind is trying to synthesize out of the information points that it gathers. So it's what they call the conceptia. They had a paradigm, and the facts were added up in alignment with the paradigm they had. Mm-hmm. We see that right now. People believe in the two-state solution. Whatever the facts are, because they know how to add it up. Nobody, and I think many people were wrong in this way. I think I was wrong in this way. Because of Hamas was shooting so many rockets that were getting intercepted by Iron Dome, it came to seem kind of like, yes, they for sure wanted to kill us, but they were mostly in it for the effort, right? They like to try to kill us, but they didn't care so much. It was like modern elementary school. A for effort. You tried hard, but they weren't so interested in the success. No, it turns out they're really actually interested in the result, and we came to believe otherwise. And it was a big mistake. And I think it's hard for people to understand mentalities so different. No one could expect something so horrible. They've never done anything so horrible. They've never done something so ambitious.
Mm-hmm.
And we underestimated the threat. And, how did it happen? You still see the President of the United States underestimating the threat. And now we'll call it a Palestinian state, it'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
Conceptions are powerful things.